Well, maybe we'll get started. So I'll call this meeting to order at 7:03 p.m. Um, I'm just going to pull up the agenda here on my end. So first order of business is the meeting minutes as usual. Um, so first we have the regular meeting minutes. Um, the meeting minutes on January 20th, 2026. Hey, and the meeting minutes on February 18th. So first, I will see if anyone has any comments on those two sets of meeting minutes.
Not me.
I see there's a very, very minor typo in the February 18th line 74.
Got it.
The
Okay.
developer, the developer is willing to meet with the AHT. It says met.
Yep. Got it. Just changed
Small,
it.
small thing.
No, I think, I tell myself I purposely make that so you guys actually read the meeting minutes, but that's not.
I was gonna say how very concise and well done they were. I should have opened with
This
that.
is this is the old. I don't want any brown M&Ms.
Brown M&Ms, yes.
The old guys know what that means.
Yes.
I also know what that means.
Oh, okay.
And also have a very minor thing on the minutes.
Okay, good.
Um, just in lines 22 and 26, you listed out that David abstained from both votes, but that's just not in the accounts.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Great. And actually, yep. Got it. And actually should be 3-1 as well.
Yep.
Great catch.
Okay.
That was David trying to abstain, and I just refused.
Sorry, not accepting.
Yep, got it. Awesome.
And then line 44, letters of support on the it should be proposed warrant
Yep.
article.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Line 49, it can be warrant article was bigger. I think that being can just be deleted.
Yep. Got rid of being. Yep. Great.
62, it should be mini boost.
62. Yep. Got it.
And
Thank you.
thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Anything on the January 18th meeting minutes? Or January 20th. I'm sorry, I should rephrase. Oh, let me go back to my notes. What did I say? Yeah, sorry, January 20th. Anything on the January 20th meeting minutes? That was obviously a pretty small one.
Nope, that's good.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes
As amended.
as amended? Thank you.
Yep. So moved.
And for the great, awesome. Can I have a
Second.
second? All right, Paul, great. All right, all in favor. Al,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
David,
I
Ellen.
Aye.
Excellent, thank you. And then approval of the February 18th, 2026 executive meeting minutes. Are there any comments on the executive meeting minutes?
Nope.
no.
All right. Hearing none, do I have a motion? And I guess the question on this one, let me just go back and look at it. This was on 150 Framingham Road. I don't know if we need to be retaining this, but actually the question is okay to release these or do we want to retain these? I think we could probably release. I don't know if we're actively following it anymore, but
I think we can release them. The property has been sold, so
yeah.
yeah, and it would be a new matter if we went after it again. So I would move to approve and release.
Okay. Do I have a second? Okay,
Second.
great. All right, awesome. All in favor, Al,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
and Ellen.
Aye.
All right, excellent.
Can
All
I
right,
can I
so the next,
suggest that
go
we
ahead.
go out of order, and since Jim has given us his time and he's here, and we'd love to hear from him.
Yep, no, happy to do that. Yeah, so I have no issues with that. If everyone's okay with it, we can skip down to discussions of potential strategies for affordable housing and the topic being Southfield Road apartment complex. So Al, I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, thank you. I've had a couple of conversations with Jim, but nothing in great detail. But I thought, this is a development that is within the MBTA zone, and so it will be at a minimum 10% affordable units. And I think this is an opportunity for us to understand what Jim is trying to do, and also see A, how we can help him, and B, whether there is an opportunity perhaps to expand the number of affordable units in return for something that the board might be able to offer him. So, Jim, can you just sort of give us some background on what you're doing, what the current status is, and what your thoughts are?
So where we're at right now with the project, thank you, Al. So where we're at right now with the project is we filed with conservation. So we
Actually,
actually filed.
could I, who are you with, Jim?
James Benincasa. So we have Kincasa. We have multiple companies. The one that's going to be doing this is Southville Apartments. Will be the one that we're permitting the Southville under. So.
Okay.
Some of the other business that we have, my uncle's Elite Homes. We have apartment buildings right now. If you're familiar with Boylston, we have Trailside Apartments, Brookside Apartments, right on 140. We just finished up Trailside, so really somewhere in the range of 200 to 300 units at this point right now of apartments. So we have mostly 40Bs. We have some that are special permit, but most of them are 40Bs. I think we have close to 600 apartments that we're permitting right now to be built. So we do have a lot. I'm in the permitting end, so it's a family business. We have my uncle, who's kind of the head of it. Me, I do all the permitting, land acquisition. My cousin Cohen's actually the one who does the development end of it. And then my other cousin, she's the one who manages the properties after we're done. So we build them, we keep them, we rent them. It's a long-term play for us. To be honest with you, they're not. Everybody thinks they look really good because the rentals and the amount of units and everything, but with the cost of construction, the interest rates and everything, it's more of a long-term play, and that's why you're seeing a lot of them get permitted but not actually get built, right? Because performer-wise and finance-wise, they're a struggle for people, and we're very lucky to honestly to have my uncle that's kind of behind this does well. And it's a long-term play with us. So they take like 5-10 years to actually start turning, not costing money and turning a profit. And most people aren't looking to do that. They're trying to permit them and flip them. We're a little bit different where we build them, we keep them, maintain them, rent them. So it's worked for us and other people, but we've been fortunate. So this one is an MBTA. This one, unlike the 40Bs where those are 25% affordable, this one is a 10% affordable. We're proposing 60 units over there. As of right now, it's two 30-unit buildings with a clubhouse in the middle. We actually filed with conservation. We had a meeting a couple weeks ago now. Well, we filed, and then there was an ORAD that came out, which actually is changing the layout of it. So we actually went into the meeting. We should have just continued. I went in there, but the layout's going to change a little bit. We're actually in the process of moving things around just because of the wetland lines. On the back side of the property is the train tracks. On the other side of that is actually there's a river. So we have a riverfront thing that we're working through right now. So again, long story, but we're changing the layout of it. I think we still will end up with some form of 60 units. And I don't know if we'll make one building a little bit bigger or one smaller, but we're in the process of doing that now. The goal is, it was designated this area for for the apartments, 15 units per acre. It's a 4-acre site. We meet the parking requirements. And we're trying to add the clubhouse, but I know that's a little bit of we're getting some pushback on that as well. And if that's going to go, it's going to go. The affordable component with this is the 10% affordable. It's kind of hard for us to increase that number.
Mm.
And in all honesty, it has really to do with our cost basis of the land acquisition in this. And, it's not just the rents every month. Obviously, when we're reducing down the rents, that's amortized over 30 years.
Mm.
When you're decreasing the rent, it's a huge number. So like we were doing this we have this question come up a lot is, can you make more affordables? The issue with it is it literally changes your performer like millions of dollars because it's not everybody says, well, it's a couple $100,000 a year, and you're like, yeah, but over a 30-year amortization, it's a big number, right? So and these things are struggling to get penciled, they're struggling to get financing, and when we're building these things now, we're like 25-30% that we have to put up of cash for on our construction budget. And then we have to use our cash before we end up even pulling draws from banks on a lot of these.
Yeah.
It's these things are a struggle to get done. And that's why, so many people think they permit these 40Bs, and it's very time consuming. As you guys know, everybody wants affordable housing. It's a great idea. It's this, and then you propose it and everybody comes out and this isn't the right place and it should go over here. And it's never, it's always a struggle. We hear the same thing. And in every meeting, we hear the same exact thing between, I do 40Bs and I build houses for people with traumatic brain injury and for nonprofits. We hear about it there too. Every time I'm permitting one, there's opposition to everything you go. And 99% of the time we build them, they're done. They're beautiful and we never hear anything after, right? But it's the unknown. They count the units, how many, cars it is. And, everybody's like, oh, you're going to add this many cars. They're not sitting there at the exit waiting to leave at the exact same time, right? People leave for work at different times of the day. They come home at different times of the day. There's a flow to everything. So it's not always what it seems, but I get it. It's a change to someone's neighborhood and they push back on us and we do listen. But, I guess, with this one, with adding, I don't think that there would be enough value in you guys adding to me with this one to make more affordable, because to be honest, we're close to paying almost $2 million for the land. So it's a big number, right out of the gate as my land acquisition. It's a good town. I live in this town. I love this town. I've, been here since 2017. My wife grew up here. So, my kids are in school here and I love this town and again, it's a great town. So we can pay a little bit more, but for you guys to come and contribute to this, I just don't think that you'd get as much bang for your buck as you could, if we ever used it on, some land that the town owns or something that, that could be done differently. And in my personal point of view with affordable housing and, my engineers, I drive them nuts with it because I'm always like, small houses, like, we should be designing units and homes that can be built that, are more affordable. These to do flats and to do apartments, they're still really expensive on the builds. So you're always, I don't know. When I was talking to Al, I'm like, obviously we're open to discussing something with it. I just don't think that you'd get the effect that you're looking for. And I think the money would go better somewhere else, doing something else on another piece of land that I would love to help with or, be part of or just discuss with you guys and come in and give you, the developer's perspective of what's possible and how we can do things. I'd love to do that. Just so, like I said, I love this town. I live in this town. So I'd be more than happy to volunteer time of helping you or, our resources. We have engineers, I have architects on staff. So, I'd love to, I'd be open to doing that with something else if you came, if there was something we could look at. So I don't really know what else. I don't know if I said something wrong or if it was, if it helps or doesn't help, but again, I don't want to waste the time or money or, the resources of the town with something like that.
I think what you said is super helpful
Oh, thank you. All
in the
right.
context of understanding because we're all trying to figure out how to best leverage the resources that we have. And from a practitioner like yourself who understands what the financing issues are, what the construction issues are, what the opposition issues are, and
Mhm.
how a deal can pencil out, having that information is valuable to this group of folks who are just trying to figure out how we can do the most good with what we have. So, and what you ended with, I thought was super helpful too, to say, hey, I'd be willing to help you guys try to figure this out, kind of thing. So, in my opinion, it was super helpful.
Thank you. Like I said, I've always wanted to find a piece of land that you can do the smaller houses, right? Because like at the end of the day, these apartments, we get two demographics, right? We're getting either really the young people starting off that are really never home, that are in one of our apartments that it's and they want to get out of it, or we're getting the older generation that want to get rid of their house, they want to travel, and typically we see that is we try to stick elevators in buildings to get to that, to get
Mm.
because they want to be up on the either first floor, but if they're in an elevator they don't mind going up second, third, fourth floor. So elevated buildings are huge for the over 55, over 65-ish crowd that we do get a lot of those in these houses. We don't, I mean, in our units. You don't really see like my age group with the younger kids, right? I'm 41. I got a 15, 13, and 9-year-old. You're not really usually getting that. And I think that that's the people that you're missing because let's face it, especially in a town like Southborough, it's hard to get in. It's expensive. And you look at these numbers and you're like, we were fortunate. We bought in 2017 and we've been in town and we've moved around a couple times in town. So we've been in and been able to ride up the inflation of this town. But, coming in from an outside, you're like, whew, like it's very expensive and now it's unachievable for, a lot of people in that age group. So you're like, what could be done to help that? And I think it's more of, a smaller house, something they can be proud of. It's a home. It's,
Mhm.
it's not an apartment that's not theirs. It's, and I've always wanted to do those and design those, and you could do them to try and do them like the most efficient way, which, we do a lot of like ABI homes, like brain injury homes. No, no basements. It's a slab on grade, and you can go up, and it's the most cost effective way to build, right? So you're like, how do you get that, still have efficiencies, like that you want spray foam insulation, you want good windows, you want a quality product, but there's ways to, I think, achieve it that if you guys had land in town, and again, if you were contributing to helping, taking it through a permitting process or whatnot, I think you'd get a better bang for the buck with that. So
James, for the housing that you build and develop and your family manages, what is the agency that monitors that? Is that so state agency that monitors compliance with affordability? How's that work?
yeah, so honestly, my cousin, she's the one who deals with that. Again, I'm more on the front line of it. I'm more
Gotcha.
of the so when we're doing the 40Bs, I have the girl that I work with that does all my permitting for the 40Bs. I know Maureen is the one who comes in that monitors, which units my cousin's renting that are affordable, and then you go into I think it goes to like the town first. The town gets, the people within the town get to apply first, and then obviously it's like a certain amount of time. Then it goes outside of the town.
Gotcha.
Uh,
Okay.
Typically, honestly, we a lot of the times though, we never really see the vacancies on the affordable units
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
we're ground up. So we're going through the initial process of renting them. Once people are in there and they're paying that low rent,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
don't move. You know what I mean? And
Of
why
course.
would they, right? Like
Right. Right.
we always joke around. I'm like, they're always the one with the nicest car in the parking garage, parking lot. You're like, damn it,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's, it drives you nuts. But they don't move. It's
Right.
kind of just the way it goes. And from their perspective, once they're in, they're in. They can't, you can't kick them out if they start making more money or something happens. But typically we don't see those. We don't see those moving much. They're kind of in there.
And there's usually either a state or a federal programs, usually a state that would monitor that, and if their income goes over a certain point, that that there are rules for that too. But yeah, no, it's just interesting to see and understand what that process looks like, especially for an organization like us, like what can we do to leverage the resources we have. So super helpful.
Yeah. Like I said, they did come out with this there's a couple new zoning bylaws that came into play. Like there's a 40Y right now, which is pretty interesting. A 40Y, you have to have support of the town. I think it's the select board. And what you can do is you can actually, with a piece of land, you can go to, I think it's 50 feet of frontage. We were just looking at it the other day, but you can do, I believe it's 50 feet of frontage, 5,000 square feet of a minimum of 5,000, maximum of 10,000 square feet of area per lot. You have a maximum livable floor area of like 1,800 square feet. Because again, like it's like we always say with the 40B process, right? Everybody, pushes on the 40B process, but you're like, 40B was really the state coming in and saying, like, enough with this, snob zoning of an acre lot with 200 feet of frontage. And they're coming in and saying, all right, guys, like, the towns aren't just voluntarily doing this, so we're going to give you guys a way to permit it and to get to get a higher density. Obviously, when that happens, all the developers, we went right to, flats and apartments and stuff like that. And I think that these areas, I think what they're trying to do, from what I've seen, is they're trying to push more of the smaller houses, more efficient houses. So they put into the 40Y, and I don't quite understand it enough yet. It was kind of my attorney actually is permitting one, and it's smart house growth or smart growth that they're calling it too. But I thought that was pretty interesting because what it is then it obviously, if you're building a roadway and you only have to build, 50 feet to get a buildable lot, then 200 feet to build a buildable lot, that road is very expensive to build, right? It's so you're obviously the higher density, the more affordable things are. So I like that one, and I think that one would be a good move for a town to do, or a developer to do, because you're selling these units. It's not just going to be 25% or something. It would be the entire community would be more affordable. It's not going to be probably won't be an 80% AMI, but it's also going to be like achievable for more of that I think that group that's kind of lost right now of, with kids, need space, doesn't want to be in an apartment building, is that group is the one that's kind of getting
Yeah.
left out.
Yeah.
So now I would look into that. Sorry.
Just for the sake of argument, I get what you say about how it's difficult to add more than the 10% affordable. But just for the sake of argument, so we can put numbers to this, like if we were to say, give you some amount of money to add another affordable unit, any idea what that sum of money might be?
I can find out. I can get that number. I don't want to throw something out there and be wrong in either one of our directions and mislead you. It's something that I can get a number pretty quickly on and send over to you
Okay.
to answer that. But yeah, I can definitely do that.
And does that number bake in what the financing effects are over as you described over the life of of whatever the investment horizon is? So it's like, yeah, you give us this money, but this is the effect of that over the period of the.
And I can show you that. And again, like when we did that for Grafton, it was kind of the same thing. And they're like, can you go to 75% AMI? Can you go to 60% AMI? Can you add this? And we did a performer for them and we showed it to them. And again, it was like $8 million. And they're like, oh my God. And you're like, you don't, because it does. And like,
Right.
so if you came to me and said $1 million, you'd look at it and say, well, that's all I'm going to save, monthly on, $1 million loan spread out over, a 30-year amortization. And that's where I'm saying, like, I don't think that anybody, for the money that you would spend, I don't know if you'd get enough value to somebody, right? Like, so, if it was $300, $400, $500 a month, you look at it and say, it's a lot of money for, giving somebody that much of a break where it's, I think that, if the town had some land and some resources that you could develop on and maybe money towards that, I think that that's
Yeah.
when you get a big, you'd see a big difference for people. And especially like if you could do a single family development and maybe not restricted to an AMI number, but we're going to do houses that, start at 500, right? Where like nothing is 500,000 anymore
Right.
for a new house that, someone can be in there with their family, right? So it's just my opinion, and I could be wrong.
Yep.
But if you could at least think about what that number would be, and
Absolutely. Yeah.
what's the worst thing that could happen? We might say yes.
Right, right. You don't know
Yeah,
unless you try, right?
yeah, exactly.
But that's
Yeah,
also considering if you don't have other options to weigh it against. Like
yeah,
you kind of have that. It's
Right.
as good as a benchmark.
Yeah.
But then we could say, all right, let's look at other options and then benchmark it
yeah,
against what you described and say, all right, this investment would give us, let's say just throw numbers out, 2%.
Mhm.
This one would give us 20%. So at least we would have some frame of reference because we're this is kind of not I wouldn't say new, but we're not experts in what how you best leverage town resources to
Yeah.
get affordable housing in. So, this will be a good, like, all right, if we did this, this is what it would cost, and this is what the return would be, kind of
Okay.
thing.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
the second thing that I think we might be able to do is so you're going to build 60 units, which actually all count towards our goal of affordable units because they're all rental units, and so that gets us to our 10%,
Mhm.
and would have four affordable units. So I think the other question you have is I would have is the board has some modest influence with other boards,
Yep.
and whether we could support something like this as you go before either planning, zoning, or conservation to indicate that we've spoken, and this is consistent with our long range plans. That sort of thing is something, regardless of the money, I think we might want to consider doing.
Okay. The only thing to that, Al, is I would just double check and I'm not sure in either direction. So I know when we're doing our 40Bs, when they're rental, 100% of them count towards it. I think that with the MBTA, I think you only get the credit for the units
Oh,
that are
okay, all right.
affordable. You might, and I could, again, Al, I could be wrong.
I think Ellen's agreeing with you, and she knows a
Is he?
lot more
Okay,
than
yeah,
I
yeah,
do.
I believe
That's right.
so.
Okay. Well,
Is that true?
actually, four affordable units that counted, we are right on the edge of our 10%.
Yeah, I think with a couple of developments that are proposed in town, I think you guys should be right there, right?
Yeah,
From when we were calculating it for other things, we were kind of
well, they
considering.
have to actually happen.
That's, I know.
Somebody's got to pull
To be
a
honest with you, from the
permit.
developer standpoint, a lot of these towns are like, we're in safe harbor, and you're like, yeah, today, like it's again like a lot of these things, because you're going to the banks and they're hard to get funded. They're really hard to get the funding for. And to be honest with you, we see a lot of developers. My daughter's walking around. Sorry, my little 9-year-old girl. So a lot of them, what the developers do, and sorry, is you get a lot of developers that are permitting these things that don't actually know the true construction costs. And a
Yeah.
lot of the times that I get frustrated because I'll come in after them and they give everything away. And they come into the meetings and we'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do
Yeah.
that. Like, and they promise, and you're sitting
Yeah.
in the background, you're like, dude, you're never
Yeah.
going to get this thing financed. Like, what are you
Yeah.
doing? Like, and it doesn't do anybody any good. And like,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like we always joke around, it's like, well, you can give anything you want if you can't build it, like at the
Yeah.
end of the day, it's not going to, promise you the world if I don't have to do it, so
I'm,
it,
I'm on the bank. I'm on the banking side. I work for Bank of America,
okay.
so I
Oh,
can
you get it. Yep.
I sanction what you're saying there. And the bank is very, very particular about how these deals pencil out. So
Yes, yes, because they're hard to get through. And like you
yeah,
said, the banks are making us spend our money first. They're like,
yeah,
put that money, we literally have to put the money into a bank account, and then their draws start after our cash is depleted.
yeah,
And And then, and it's hard even because after we have to we wait a year and then we refinance it and then we have to pull our cash out to basically do the next project. And
Yep.
that's how, we have kind of two, we try to keep two in the hopper so that every year we can refinance one of them and use that cash to start the next one. So
Mhm.
they're hard. They're hard.
Okay. Well, if you wanted, you know, the
I
board
can
support
definitely,
as you go before other boards, I think that's something we would consider. I'll only speak for myself, but
okay.
this is consistent with
Yeah.
the town's long-term planning goals, and we've got big piles of paper that say this is what we should do, and very
Yep.
little to show for it.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. It is
Ellen,
the
do you have
goals,
any?
and obviously there's the reality of it. Sorry.
That's okay. Ellen, do you have any comments or questions?
So I was just going to ask, if the kind of calculus would be any different if instead of thinking about adding additional affordable units, if it was changing how deeply affordable the existing units were. So, like you said, if it was going from 80 to 60 or something like that, kind of how different is that math?
So it's obviously it at the end of the day, it's the numbers, right? So like if whether I'm adding more affordable units and I'm getting, you know, just say,
Yep.
2,200 a month and now I'm getting 1,800 a
The
month.
rental income's going down.
Right. So it's
Right.
it's
But
it's at the
just
end of
is
the
it going
day,
down more or less?
correct. Right.
Yeah.
One way or the other, it's obviously the debt ratio that they're looking at is, what's the debt, what's the income, and what can this thing support? And when you're going, like, again, so it doesn't matter whether I'm going to a lower AMI. You don't want to obviously lower too low on the AMI on the scale because it does then kind of tend to affect the other units right there too when everybody else, so it affects the rental of the whole thing. But you obviously adding more affordables, it's really just the difference between market rate and in obviously what we would get is what dictates the whole thing.
Okay. Those are all the questions I have. If we can follow up on, pencil out some numbers and, you can probably shock us, but that would be useful for our knowledge. I will tell you that we struggled to find, the town owns exactly one parcel that I think is developable. It's over on Atwood, over
Yeah.
by the Penn School.
Yeah.
And it's got a serious lead contamination problem that needs to be
Oh,
remediated. So believe me, we wish we could find a parcel of land that was developable that the town owned.
yeah.
Yeah, so James, just a couple quick questions. So one, first, just thank you for taking the time to spend with us, right? We have been looking at, many ways to, create affordable housing in town, right?
Mhm.
Or different housing types, which you already had alluded to, right? So whether it's actually having affordable housing or just improving housing diversity, whether it be senior housing, townhomes, apartments. Obviously, the MBTA communities for many people in town is something that was imposed on them, right? But we did do the districts. And so, I think, at least personally, I think we're definitely supportive of, apartments coming in, where we have to do them. And, the 10% affordable is definitely great, right? There's obviously an affordability crisis, but also have a supply crisis, right? So just want to say thank you for your time on that. Just a couple quick questions. So James, you guys are 3 stories, right? The two buildings, or what's the number of stories in those buildings?
So they're technically 2.5.
Okay, I was
So
just curious.
yeah, I mean it's obviously 3 stories. So the way they're
Yep.
designing it now is, the roof line comes down on the third, basically on the third floor to create that 2.5 look.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, not that you'll know this at this point, but just curious, from a market perspective, your cost of construction, are you around like 500,000 per unit, six? I'm trying to think, just rough numbers. I'm just trying to think about like, what's the burden for you guys to actually build this on a per unit basis? Not necessarily this one, because I know they're all different, James, but I'd
Yeah.
just be kind of curious about where are you seeing total development costs, as you look at these projects nowadays?
So you like you said, it's somewhere between, depending on the unit size, we're somewhere in that high threes to 500, depending on, obviously these ones are just 1 and 2 bedroom units.
Yep.
But yeah, you were right there. You're right within the ballpark, obviously, depending. I think what's
Yeah.
harder about Southville, we're having a little bit of a challenge with is It's the the ratio of the living floor square footage opposed to like the land.
Yep.
There's a ratio in there. And what we're ended up doing is a lot of our units we're always putting offices in because like just
Mhm.
like this, right? Everybody's Zooming, everybody's working from home. With those, because of that ratio right there, I think most of them are going to have to get rid of the offices, which is making it more difficult, to be honest. I wish that what ratio thing wasn't there. Obviously, nobody's going to build, huge units that are going to be out of scale, but at the same time, like you do want to give the people, what they need within the home. So that'll be these units are a little bit smaller than what we're typically have been building on Southville. So
What kind of size square footage to the units are you seeing?
I so we're somewhere in the, like the 1,000 to four. I think there's 1,000 to like 14. These ones might be closer to like 800 or so.
Hmm.
He's not
Yeah.
completely done with the set of plans, so
Yeah.
he did send me a rendering. I could send it over to you too of what he's thinking, and he did give units and stuff on it. So I could forward that over to you as well if you want to see it.
And more out of curiosity, two bedroom, one bath, or two bedroom, two baths? Like, where are you guys in the market?
2 bedroom, 1 bath is what
Yep.
we've. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No, again, I think there's a lot of developers have shifted to two bedroom, two baths, but just like you said, construction costs. So I'm starting
Yep.
to see more two bedroom, one baths in the market, just as a
Yep.
way to, mitigate costs. And again, diversity of units is important. But the reason why I was just asking on the average total cost per unit is, just more for your background again and again. I appreciate your time. We're
Actually, you know
definitely
what?
finding,
I'm wrong. I'm wrong. It's so the studios have. I can actually. Let me see. Let me see. Again. Can I share or no? Okay.
you may need permission to share. Hold on.
Okay. I
Mhm.
was wrong. It's two baths. Sorry. The
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
studios have one. I could send it to you, but I was to say I could
Yeah.
share the screen and show you the layouts of them if you
Yeah.
wanted. Okay.
The reason why I'm just bringing up the cost per unit is because obviously, I mean, we're like you just said, we're looking and trying to see what's the most efficient way for us to deploy town capital, right?
Mm,
These are CPC funds, basically most of them for affordable housing, so they're dedicated funds.
mm,
Obviously, us just going out and buying a single family home or a duplex is not very capital efficient, right? It's very expensive, right, to convert something to affordable. But to your point, I think just to kind of, go deeper on Al's point, it'd be great for you to, if there is a cost number that if we could contribute that makes you neutral on adding another unit, because again, you still do get rent, right, on those units and,
yeah.
understand the pro forma. There's probably a number that makes you neutral. Not, again, this is more exploring, right?
Mm,
At the end of the day, we're just trying to understand. And it's great just, because you deal with the smaller projects, or when I say small, they're pretty big, 60 units, but you're well versed in it. And us just getting that fee, it's just helpful for us to understand what's the break even point where, not that you guys would even do it still, but like makes you neutral, right? Yeah. So if I had
right.
an extra making it up 150,000, yeah, it doesn't matter whether I have, 10% plus one unit affordable versus 10% because it just, it washes out. But
Mm,
obviously, you understand there's a long-term value in the sale is really where it comes down to, right? Those units, the market rate units are worth more. So,
yeah.
but yeah, no, appreciate you being a resident, first of all, obviously, and, going through the process. But yeah, appreciate your time tonight. Those are all my questions.
Okay.
I
All
don't have
right,
more
great.
questions. I'm happy to follow up with you and if at some point you need uh letter of support or something, I think, we'd certainly be more than willing, I think, to consider doing something like that if you
I
particularly go
appreciate it.
before. I don't know where you stand with the planning board or do you have to be before the ZBA at this point?
No, just planning. So technically the only permit that we actually need is site plan approval. Because it is a by right project. There's no ZBA, obviously no variance or anything. We're asking for a couple waivers that I think just make sense for the project. One of the biggest one is in one of the decisions, I mean, in one of the requirements was that they wanted the parking in behind the buildings. If I do that, I'm going to be stuffing the buildings like 20 feet off the road. It would look horrible. So we're putting the parking in the front with screening going across. So it's achievable the other way, but obviously not ideal for neighbors, for us, for anybody. But it's just site plan approval.
Okay, great.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Thanks,
All right.
James. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks you. Appreciate it.
Yep, thank you.
Great. Awesome. All right. Okay, so going back up to the top of the agenda, so I'll skip release of the executive meeting minutes until we're executive session. So I think it's just time for us to review the executive meetings that we have out there. So new business. I think we talked about this last year. So it's been about a year since we elected chairs and vice chairs. And would definitely like to, put this out there that I think at least my perception would be is that it'd be great to kind of do more of a rotating thing. It's obviously, a lot to be chair. So I'd love to relinquish the chair and give an opportunity for someone else to be chair. With that, I might just open for discussion, just generally and see if anyone else is interested or wants to be nominated. I definitely can nominate someone too as well. I don't have that fear. But anyways, just figured I'd just open that up.
Well, I think you've done your part, Doug. So
Yep, I agree. You've done a very good job. Um, I'm lucky because I'm I'm a short timer. I'm the select board not appointee, and I won't be on the select board in May. So you can't pick me.
That's what he was saying. I was just going to as the new person in this group, I was just going to say it's a great idea to have a process where you kind of rotate leadership, both from the perspective of, sort of sharing the responsibility and so it's not overburdening one person, but it also, I think, lends kind of a different kind of a perspective to for us to kind of sit in that seat. I'm not volunteering, but I'm just saying, just as a matter of course, I think it's a great idea. And I think and it kind of helps, build a bench, build the kind of leadership and training, rotate. I think there's so many benefits to doing what you're suggesting we do. So just wanted to, as the new person, just offer some support for that concept.
And I think the other thing I suggested last time, which I would reiterate too, because I think this makes it a little bit easier, but I do think there's five of us, right? And now we'll be, replaced when, he does phase out, right? But the concept of, each of us taking a meeting and doing meeting minutes, right? And rotating that through the entire group. Again, it's
Yeah,
just that's probably one of the biggest burdens.
yeah,
The chair still has a lot to do in terms of making sure getting the agendas in on time, posting the meeting minutes, that type of stuff. But
yeah.
I will say that's probably, and Paul's obviously been very helpful with that. He's done a couple. So thank you, Paul, for that, in the past.
Is it in
But
like a Word document, the meeting minutes that can be kind of like edited or so that it's easier, so you're not doing everything from scratch all the time, or is that
Well, so I think the good news is that there is now an AI summary, that is attached, right? So you can actually pull it right off of
awesome?
you know, um, Paul, I think Paul has been very clear. It's not sometimes the best AI
Yes.
summary that comes out, but it
The
does
start.
help,
It's the start.
right? Um, but so there is, I mean, and then the meetings are recorded, right? So I've at least have gone back at times where if I fail to take notes of who, moved and seconded or approved something, the great thing is everything is right online and you can just skip forward to that part. Um, I think you guys have seen the meeting minutes, which I think Jim Haggerty has been pretty happy with. I definitely get into more thematic, right, type things, summaries, not, it's I'm trying to think of what was it, Band of Brothers when the lieutenant was doing reports that were way too long, it's meant to be a summary, right?
I,
Yeah,
Um, and
I appreciate that.
yeah,
yeah,
it's meant to catch the theme, and I try
Yeah,
to do it more as the theme of the board. As opposed to getting into, Paul specifically said this or Ellen said this, like sometimes that's a little bit too detailed.
yeah,
yeah,
Maybe for more critical items where we're actually, going to be, issuing money, right, or spending money, and there are differences in opinions, then I think I would be highlighting that type of thing. But so, anyways, but I would say that as just my experience over the last year, and also just being on Shopsy, we don't have admin support, right? Which is probably the biggest burden for our board, and the meeting minutes is probably the most time suck, for lack of a better word. And so,
Yep.
but although I've gotten really good at trying to do them within 48 hours so my memory doesn't fade, and then I have to go watch the video sometimes. But so anyways, but I would definitely recommend no matter what we do that we just, we should just, I think, I don't know if I sent the calendar around. Did I send around the calendar of dates for this year? I think I did, yeah. But it might be one of those things where it's just people, kind of, like we kind of go in order and then we just rotate, right? And, if someone can't be there, we can flip it around, or switch around. So I will do tonight anyways, because I'm still chair, and I will handle those and get them out to you guys. All right.
The reality
So,
is minutes need to say who was there and, a very brief summary, very brief of what was
yep,
talked about and a record of whatever votes were taken.
yep. All right. So Paul or Ellen, do we have any volunteers?
I suppose it's my turn being vice.
Paul, I
Second.
appreciate. Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, yeah. I nominate Paul Desmond for chair of the. What is it? What's our official name here? The
Affordable
Board of
Housing Trust
Trustees of the
Fund.
Affordable Housing Trust.
Affordable Housing Trust.
Yep. A second.
All right. Um, all right. All in favor? Well, Paul, first, do you accept the nomination?
Sure.
I like the decisiveness of that.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure. I
Thank you,
guess.
Paul.
Why not?
Thank you, Paul.
thank you. All right.
Um,
All in favor? Al,
Aye.
um, David,
Aye.
Ellen,
aye.
Paul.
I
And Doug is aye. Thank you. Awesome. So starting, I'll make sure we get that to the town clerk so they're aware. And Paul, you will be chair at the next meeting. Paul was vice chair. So now we do need a new vice chair. And again, this typically has been, just for background, Paul has been that, so part support role. I do copy Paul on everything when I submit it. So the idea is that, the vice chair is just all the email chains back and forth to, the town for agendas and for meeting minutes. And just again, it's just a way to keep track of everything. So do I have any volunteers or nominations for vice chair?
I want to know if Ellen's interested.
was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
That makes three of us.
There you
We're
go.
gonna be
I would
drafted.
be happy to. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, so I'll make it more formal. I will nominate Ellen for vice chair of the Board of Trustees of the Affordable Housing Trust. Do I have a second?
Second.
Paul is a second. All right, all in favor? Al,
Aye.
Paul,
I
David,
Aye.
and Ellen. Excellent. I'm actually really excited that Paul and Ellen did not say no on those, so that was great too as
That's
well.
awesome.
And no, honestly, I think look, I think I really do appreciate it. I do think the rotating is a good way to do it, right? And it's also good too because I can tell you that sometimes when I'm on meetings, I'm so focused on taking notes and listening, that as you said, David, it's just good to kind of rotate and it frees us up, to have different roles as we go through it. And so, but I have been excited to be on this board. Al, I will say I am sad to see you go.
Well, you're not rid
You
of me
definitely,
yet.
Not
yeah,
yet.
yeah, not yet, but
But it
so,
sounds like we have a potential candidate.
yeah. So, all right, great. Well, thank you guys for that. I will document that. I'll get it over to Jim Haggerty just so he can update the information, and we'll go from there. Next item is the Affordable Housing Trust CPC application update. So, Ellen, I might defer to you because again, I did not stay on after they kind of went through their questions, but turn it over to you. Where do we stand on this? Yes.
Sure. And just first, while I have the floor, just thank you, Doug, for your leadership, your chairmanship, through a lot of work getting this board reconstituted and to where we are. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So with CPC, the board did vote at, was it our last meeting? At a recent meeting, to support, the application. Forget exactly how many of us were there. There was one, nay vote, and the rest were in support. And so it was a CPC member who's, had brought up her concerns in the past, so it didn't come as a surprise or anything, but has been interested to see a little bit more of what the trust is envisioning as kind of a strategy going forward. So that was her reservation. And the rest of CPC voted to support this. So that is what is going forward to town meeting coming up in April. And yeah.
And Ellen, do you think, I mean, I think last time we did a presentation, correct, at town meeting? Does it
Yeah.
make sense? Yeah, should we do, I mean, I don't think it's, I mean, again, I think it might be just rinse and repeat. It might even be a simpler one, but I'm assuming that's probably something that we should prepare, correct?
I think so. I think yeah, it never hurts to be prepared with that. I think we have a good basis to draw from the last presentation. I think just with the addition of what we've been working on over the past year, and why we're coming back again this year. So, um, yeah, I'd be happy to work on that and kind of make some updates from last year's presentation if that would be helpful.
That would be awesome. I'm happy, Ellen, once you take a draft, a stab at it, I'm happy to be the second set of eyes on that um,
Yeah.
as well. So.
Thank
Okay,
you.
great. Well, great that they were in support, and I definitely was at those meetings and understand some of the reservations and the concerns as well. And but as we stated, we definitely have discovered this is more expensive, to create affordable housing. And the good news is that we're still leaving 100,000 with the CPC as well if somebody else from the town comes up. So I think it's a good compromise. And again, at least my perspective is that we continue to on an annual basis to continue to ask for the excess funds. And so, but so,
I
okay,
think it's a great idea to do a presentation because it's, if there is any reservation about what the objectives of the trust is, this is transparency, and hey, this is what we're considering, and this is how we're trying to get the most to leverage the best use of our funds. So I think it's a great idea to do it.
and Ellen, I think you have. If not, I'll send it to you. But I'll send to you the. Just going to put it in bold so I don't forget. The select board presentation that we did, because we put together those four
Right.
slides, which could be a helpful addition to early. Just like it's almost like maybe even just doing a short overview of what we've been up to. But I'll send those slides to you in its PowerPoint form.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank
Let
you.
me check and make sure that this matter isn't on the consent agenda, which would be
Yeah.
automatically approved. I don't think it is.
Okay.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
my recommendation is to be brief
Yep.
because town meeting approves these pretty regularly.
Yep.
It probably does not. Yeah, it's I would almost be to the point of 3 or 4 sentences, and then you have a presentation if the body wants it, because this is getting towards the end of the agenda,
Great
and
comment.
town meeting gets restless.
Yep.
Al, I don't know what the process is for getting on the consent agenda, but if you have any pull on that,
I have a little.
I think it'd be a good place to be, but
Yes.
Yeah.
No, it's a great comment, Al. I mean, I think that's great advice. And Ellen, maybe we can just put that like one slide together and then have a couple follow-up slides if they want to see it. If not, it's like a reference, and then we just move on, which would be fine.
Yeah, I mean there are several big items, mostly related to borrowing, that I think, and there's at least one zoning item that's probably going to need a little work.
Okay.
Do we
All
think
right,
it would be
great.
helpful to have a handout that summarizes, the same information as the presentation would, or just
Yeah,
stick with
that's
the
actually an
presentation?
excellent idea. Just put it
Okay.
out there in the pile with all of the other handouts, and people actually look at those.
Yep.
Just a one-page summary of what we do, and what the vote is for.
Perfect. I'll do that.
All right, and so we will not be meeting before town meeting again. So town meeting is on the 11th, correct? Am I correct in that? Saturday, 11th? So sorry, I'm just trying to get back to my notes. So I'm assuming, Al, so the question will be is who would like to speak on this topic? I'm obviously happy to do it. I'm happy to give it to Paul or Ellen or anyone, any volunteers, but one of us should obviously probably be the lead, to be up there if there are questions or if we have to do the presentation. So, but I don't know if anyone would like to do it. So I'll just pause there. All right. Well, then go ahead. Ellen took off mute, so I'm gonna wait. No, I'm kidding. Well, I might say maybe Ellen, maybe you and I both go up, right? I mean, you're on the CPC. I think that would be good. But I can do that as maybe my last official act of chair, since Paul was so gracious to accept chair, and technically he's not chair till that time. But so warned, I will be thinking that the chair in the future will be doing this at next town meeting. So,
Sounds right.
all right, excellent. The 55 plus housing bylaw update is next. So Ellen, I might turn it over to you. I think we talked about this last time that obviously we're not on Springtown meeting. We're looking at Fall Town meeting. But Ellen, we'll turn it over to you if you have any updates for us on that tonight.
Sure. So no real updates. When we decided to hold off until fall town meeting, the plan was to get back together with planning board. Specifically, Marnie's been working a lot on this after annual town meeting. They do have a lot of zoning articles, some larger, some smaller, but they've been putting in a lot of work leading up to annual town meeting. So the idea was to get back together after that and keep working towards the fall town meeting to get this done.
Okay, great. Well, excellent. I look
Um,
forward to that kicking back up again once we get past Springtown meeting. Again, I think there's some robust discussion, and as we all know, it's one of our key items of our housing production plan. So, looking forward to that.
and I think this is a little bit tangential, but I think still falls under the general agenda item. But so, I think part of what we've struggled with a little bit is how broad or narrow of an effort to make this. And so, there's this very specific roadblock of the cap on 55 plus housing. So I think that's been our focus. But I think there's the potential for other zoning changes that we may want to spend some time thinking about and looking at and talking to the planning board about, because I think they've been they're going through this big overhaul proposed of the industrial park district at annual town meeting, and have been talking about, did we want to tackle this piece versus kind of going through the whole zoning code when we know there's a lot of things that could be improved throughout. And so, the piece that Jim mentioned in our conversation about the 40Y, it's called like a starter home rezoning. I think there are a lot of opportunities here where we can be thinking about the zoning piece. And so want to kind of have that in our minds as we're working on the 55 plus piece as well.
Okay.
I think that makes a lot of sense, and this may fall under one of our other agenda items. But I talked to a guy today who's a nonprofit developer. It was in the context of the Northborough Road, a topic that's going to come up a little later. But he gave me some numbers on density that were not at all in line with what that zoning change is proposing. So Do we want to get into that now? Why don't we get into that now?
Yeah.
So this, the Northwell Road is a 1.47 acre parcel, right? And he said, so I was asking him like, how many units would you need to build on a parcel like that to make it viable? And he said it depends on what funding bucket, I guess you use. There's a few of them. There's a tax credit bucket, which is generally 40 units or more. Some sort of supportive housing bucket. I don't know if David, these mean anything to you, but that was like 25 or more. And then home ownership, which was 10 to 15, requires a lot of local money to do it, like 100,000 per unit. Um, and then he also, so I mean, to me, like 10 to 15 on that was per acre, I think. No, that was the number of units, but they said they built a 23 unit project in Rockport on 1.3 acres. So it was 17 senior units and 6 townhouses. And that was when I saw a presentation on that, Alan, at the MHP conference a couple of years ago in Worcester. And it was nice. I think I mentioned this before. It was like a combination of senior housing and families. So there were kids running around and the seniors loved it. And, it looked really nice. But I had no idea it was that small of a parcel. Anyway, that's kind of what we're up against, I think, and we were talking about what, 6 or something like that.
So,
I think it was 6 units per acre, right? I think it was more the density, right? So obviously, probably, I think some people thought pretty dense for Southborough. Obviously, for some other areas, not as dense.
Right.
But again, you probably get with the 4 acres. If you had 4 acres, you're getting to about that, obviously that 24 unit range, Paul.
Right.
Um,
But
so
even so it's 6. If we've got an acre and a half, that's 9.
yeah,
And he said, if you're doing 9 units, you're cooked from a subsidy standpoint.
yep.
So
Meaning there's not enough scale to make it work. Is that
I think so, yeah. And it was
okay?
also just qualifying for some of these various funding mechanisms, like,
Yeah, there has to be so many a threshold number of units for you to get the financing
Yeah.
and such.
so
yeah.
I'm familiar with that parcel. So first off, full disclosure, my daughter is an abutter, which means that I can't vote and I should not participate in any financial decisions about the lot, but I have knowledge of the parcel that I can share. The back part of that parcel is wet, so you really don't have 1.4 acres.
Okay.
I did look at the USDA soils map, and the front half of that parcel has good soils to support a septic system. You could certainly um, you could certainly just my experience is with habitat, and you could certainly bring habitat in and put a duplex on that parcel without too much difficulty. I think you
Mhm.
might be able to get more units with the 30Y. I think it had 160 some odd feet of frontage, so you might be able to get 3 units if you could do something along those lines. It's going to require uh, transferring the parcel to Habitat and then providing money. It's $100,000 to $200,000 per unit is roughly that. But this is probably the least expensive parcel of developable land in the town of Southborough, and it is close to 495, which does to some extent limit the viability of it, and there still is, at least in theory, a solar park that's going to go in across the street.
Yeah, I was going to ask. So is this part of that parcel that came up, a year or so ago,
I
or is it?
don't think so.
It's not. Okay. But right. I don't know. Do we ever find out what happened with that? I mean, so the
Uh,
town.
Nothing has happened with it. I think solar parks have become, the entire federal subsidy program is kind of gone by the wayside. But So I think we could, this is probably the most attractively priced parcel we're ever going to find in Southborough, and borrowing, a depression. Um, and we would have to move fairly quickly. And, I think given that the price is fixed, I mean, we have right of first refusal, and we would have to exercise it pretty quickly. Or rather, you would have to exercise it pretty quickly if you wanted to proceed, just given, the public acquisition rules. So we should conceivably make a decision in the next 10 days if we really want to
Yeah.
exercise the town's option.
I do think knowing what became of that last parcel that was proposed as for a solar farm, if there is going to be a solar farm across the street, you said, Al, I think that makes a difference.
Yeah, I can find out what the current status of that is. As I recall, and again, there was some question as to whether this was actually a valid 61A conversion, because it
This
appeared
current,
like the buyer really had an option to buy at a certain price.
this current one or the previous one?
The previous one, the
Yeah,
solar farm. I can find out.
That was my understanding. Yeah, I think that was my understanding too, is that, right, it has to be a bona fide offer for it to
right.
continue moving through the process. And I think the determination was that it wasn't. And so then things kind of stalled out.
Well, that was the town's determination, as I remember, but I don't know. But
It
Yeah.
there's
wasn't necessarily the
right,
sellers.
and
Yeah.
that's the end. The last I heard of it was, we said it wasn't
Yeah.
a bona fide offer, and we never heard back.
Yeah. I guess
Yeah.
one way or the other, if it was a valid offer, it's expired, and
Right.
we have no,
Yeah.
and if it wasn't, then maybe it'll come up again.
Well, so a couple of just quick comments. More first on Paul, your feedback that you're hearing. So I definitely have heard the same thing, right? So for more traditional affordable developers and nonprofits, the sweet spot is 40 to 80 units, right? And it's all tied to subsidy, right? On the rental side. They prefer 80. They can't really go more than 80 because that's when the state credits start to become very competitive, right? But going lower than 40, there's just not enough, you know, as skin in the game for them because they are still trying to make fees, right? And have something of, of scale. Interesting that you heard 10 to 15 units on the for sale because I definitely have heard in the for sale they have gone much lower. I talked to Norfolk Construction, who's a nonprofit, and well, it's quasi nonprofit, but also private developer in Boston. And they've done, again, anything from 4 to 10 units, although again, their sweet spot is right in that 25 units on the for sale side. And the subsidy they actually need is even higher than 100,000 per unit. So just more, I mean, again, I think it's just to compare data points, like, starting
Mhm.
to suggest those are kind of the schemes or that the scenarios there. Um, so anyways, on that, you know, on the North Pearl Road parcel, I mean, it's such a small parcel. Um, you know, um, I mean, again, it could be something interesting if we bought it for 216,000, like, could we get a home on it? Probably. It'd be probably something we're doing with Habitat or something smaller. I just wonder if that's the scale we want to play in. It is relatively, I think we have 120 days from the notice, but it still moves pretty quickly. But um, so anyways, but just want to at least, give my thoughts on the unit ranges, Paul, you're hearing, which I think aligns up with what I'm hearing there too as well. Um, but other
Yeah,
people's thoughts on the Northborough Road
I think
parcel?
if we wanted to do something, I think we are probably 60 to 70, from the time we decide until the time we close, which is sort of
Mhm.
that 120 days. You, there's probably, I'm going to say 75 days of public procurement process that you have to go through. So we need to, make a decision.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
So, in making that decision, kind of what opportunity is there for like a perk test or to have Habitat or a developer come out to the site and help us get a better assessment of what's possible there?
I can certainly arrange to have Habitat take a look at it. Um, this is they'd love to do something in town. I know that for a fact. Um,
Yeah.
and we could. Uh, I don't think we're going to have a perk problem. I mean, I'm on the wastewater committee, and so I've been now looking at soils all over town, and this is one of the better ones that I've found. There's, I and there are other homes in the area that have been built, so and in that same soil structure. I don't think that's going to be a problem. I could be wrong, but I doubt it.
And
But yeah, we could certainly ask if we could do a perk test and share the data. And we could probably uh, talk Bill Cundiff into sending a backhoe out.
And just a quick question, as a baseline, obviously, I'm assuming it's single family home residential. I haven't looked it up, but I'm assuming it's single family home residential. But
Yes,
as a baseline, we could do a single family home and likely an ADU because I believe ADUs are allowed anywhere in town. So at minimum, we could likely have, you know, a 2 or 3 bedroom home plus, a 1 bedroom ADU or something like that, I would assume.
you could
I'm
do
saying
that.
that out loud.
You could do that, or I think the site would support a duplex, and
And don't
conceivably, if you did this 40Y, if and you guys know more about this now than I do, he said it was a 50 feet of frontage, and you might be able to sneak three small, again, that the habitat uh, homes are sort of 30 by 35, so they're not big. And we've certainly put them on lots smaller than that. So that's a something that could be done. I will forward the print off to Habitat and ask them to if they'd be willing to take a look at the parcel.
Yeah, I think Al would be helpful too, is the call. I think I mean, we went through this before when they were on the call with us, or I think
Yeah.
you referenced, but I mean, obviously the labor is free, right? Our portion of the labor is free, but what is the cost like for them to build like a single family home or an ADU? Because again, I think we talked about this before. If we can achieve, you know, costs that start approaching 2 to 250,000 per unit, right? That's probably a range that's easy.
It's
Yeah.
much higher than that.
Yeah, that was the question. I know, like how much? Yeah, like
It cost them the now this was back when plywood was going through the roof and lumber was going through the roof, and they were up at around 500,000 per unit. I think the costs have come down now, but it's still um, a big foundation and a small foundation are not that much different. The nice thing about this lot is that it does not require a lot of site work.
yeah,
And yeah,
but
they're gonna look for the lot and some financial contribution to help offset the cost. But they have money of their own as well. They got a $3 million grant from Mackenzie Phillips. Uh, so they are trying to build. They're trying to expand their footprint. I'll get them involved and see if there's a success. That's the worst thing that could happen is we find a way to do it, and if not, that's life.
yep. No, well, again, I think it'd be great to. I mean, it's something substantive they can sink their teeth into, and they can give us some cost guidance of what they would need from us. I
Yeah.
mean, it's 216 for the parcel. If you get 2 units, that's like 108,000 per unit. If it's going to cost them 2 or 300,000, per unit to build on top of that, I would suggest that might be too expensive, for us, or in terms of what we're trying to achieve. But
Yeah.
but with that said, it'd be great to know just so we can understand like what do they like, just like we asked the other developer, what do they need from us in order to create the affordable? That would be good to know.
I'll get them involved.
And I think so. When I was more involved with Habitat, it was a long time ago. But so at that point, the model was kind of they would work with the community to set up like a local building committee to help get donations and volunteers. And so my understanding is that it wouldn't necessarily be on the trust or on the town specifically to come up with, all of that money to support it. It would be, helping organize that group, which Habitat would help organize as well to get some of the local developers to chip in. And it's the Dave Ferris framing and it's the, James Benincasa roof. And so kind of putting all of those pieces together to make it work, but not necessarily coming up with the 200 or $300,000.
Yeah, we would not have to come up with the whole sum. It's a part. And why don't I do this? I'll get in touch with them and maybe if we would probably end up having to meet in a special session.
Yep.
Because if we want to proceed, then we're gonna have to move quickly. Just
Well, and I would also say too, it's possible. I mean, this is already under P&S, right? For 216,000. I'd be curious, Al, if the town already has a perk test. Maybe they didn't submit it, but I'd be curious. But I think I agree with Ellen. Knowing the perk, the ability that it would park would be good to know too as well.
actually, if there's a perk test, it's at the Board of Health.
Yeah.
I can stop by there. They know me well now.
Okay, great.
All right.
Yeah, and I definitely think again, this is, I think I'd be more than happy to meet in a separately scheduled session that's executive session to go through this once we have the information. So, I mean, we've done this before when we were chasing the other parcels individually. So Al, as you get the information, let me know and I can coordinate with everyone to find a time
Okay.
outside of our regular meeting calendar schedule. So,
I think we have to do this in open session because
okay.
there's no real negotiation.
That's true. That's great. No, it makes it easier.
Maybe there's a negotiation with Habitat,
Yeah.
but there's no negotiation with respect to the parcel.
Yep.
Yeah, and
Good
there's
point.
nobody else who can buy it, right?
Yep.
Right. Well, no, the price is fixed.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, if we really can't get 2 units on it, I mean, to have something that's 100,000 per unit as a land value in Southborough is pretty amazing, to be honest,
Yeah.
right? So as a base.
Yeah.
And again, I think as of right, we could do a single family home and an ADU. Al, I do like your duplex, option too as well. But this is great. I'm looking forward to hearing more information.
Yeah. All right. Sounds like a plan.
On not to go out of order, I didn't put this on, but so quick question. So for meeting dates, I think I did send those out. Was there any meetings that were problematic for people?
Yeah, I had one. The 20th, May 20th was no good for me. Were Wednesdays good for everyone else? Because
Yeah. The 15th doesn't work for me.
Let me pull it up. All right. So we're talking about alternatives, Paul, to the 20th, May 20th. Is that correct?
yes.
Okay.
Wait, we haven't gotten to April yet.
Oh, all right. Sorry. Well, all right. So let's take a step back. So,
April 15th doesn't work for me.
okay. Well, the proposed date is April 22nd. Is that
22nd.
That works.
okay?
I'm not available then.
Oh, okay. Hold on a second. My calendar is spazzing out.
Did we decide on Wednesdays? I'm in a golf league. It's going to be a little tight to make it for 7 o'clock, but
Yeah, I think we started on Thursdays. David, I think you had conflicts on Thursdays, correct?
Right. I can do Tuesday, Wednesday.
well, Tuesdays are
Tuesday
good for
should be.
the select board, right? Though, what is it?
Mm.
Every other Tuesday, the select board meets. Is that right, Al?
Pardon? Yeah, Tuesdays are the
That's
select
enough.
board.
Yeah.
So it would be
All right, we can stick with Wednesdays.
April 2nd or 7th and 21st would be the select board meetings.
All right, well, maybe go, well, let's go back to April 22nd. So Ellen, you're not available the 22nd, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm not available that whole week. That's school
Oh,
vacation week.
okay. So Al, you can't do the 15th. What about the 29th? Maybe to go through this Wednesday, the 29th.
That works for me.
Works for me.
I think that might be candidates night.
Okay. Let me ask this. Al, is the select board the
First and third Tuesdays.
so would the 28th work, Tuesday the 28th work for everyone?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. So Tuesday, the 28th. All right. We got one. Excellent. All right. Now we're going to go to May. So the 20th does not work for you, Paul. The 19th is select board meeting. Do we want to try to do the 26th of Tuesday?
Works for me.
Okay. That's all right.
Yes,
Yep.
that's fine.
Okay. I'm going to probably keep with the Tuesday theme because Paul, that works better for you just generally, correct?
Yes, it does. And
All
you know
right. So
what?
then,
I got to run because I got to go meet my daughter. But sorry, but
Oh, yeah. You're going to go out into the sunshine? In the
That's
80 degree
right.
weather?
He's in
exactly
San
right.
Diego.
But
all right. Hey, no problem, Paul. Thank you so much. I
Yep.
appreciate it.
all
Thank you,
right.
Paul.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Paul.
Take care, everybody.
Chair.
Bye. Yeah.
I was going to say it, but I'm glad you said it, David. Um, so maybe what I'll do is maybe I'll just resend the schedule out and I'll pick the last Tuesday of each month. Does that make sense? It seems like um, that would seem to work generally, but then what I will probably do is maybe that probably won't work for November and December, but maybe I will flip to like maybe the second Tuesday of the month for those 2 months or something. Does that kind of make sense? I can take another look at the schedule, but it sounds like
Yep.
Tuesdays that are not the like are the second or fourth Tuesday sounds like would work better for everyone
Yep.
and would not conflict with the select board.
That works.
Works.
Okay. All right, great. All right. Going back to my agenda. Now I'm just feeling jealous that Paul's not here anymore.
And what he's doing.
Yes. All right. I don't think there's any other regular agenda items, but I will pause to see if anybody had anything else they want to talk about in regular session. Um, before we go to executive session, just briefly.
Oh, so one other thing we had talked about last meeting was looking into additional TA options. And so either the like mini boost from
Mhm.
MHP or the potential for support from like MAPC on doing more community engagement and working kind of towards more of the vision and strategy for the trust. And I have no updates on that end, but just wanted to, yeah, not lose that thread.
Okay, no,
That's
definitely. And
important.
yep. So, Ella, I can make that a more specific item next time, as well. Um, so, that would be great. And then, Ellen, is the mini boost open for application? I'm trying to remember where we were last.
Yes, it is open. And so, yeah, that's like a smaller pot of money for like a very defined project. That's not a development project that a board needs help with. So I think if we wanted to put together an application for something like planning community engagement sessions and something like that, I think that would be a good fit.
Um, Ellen, do you have access to the application? Maybe you can circulate to the board. That way we can all kind of
Yes.
take a look at it. And I know Paul was very helpful on the last one. I don't know, he might now he had to leave early. We can volunteer him for
I
that.
was
But
going to say that. You leave early, you get volunteered.
yeah. But Ellen, just to your point, so we don't, wait a month to talk about it again. Maybe we can just at least get it out there and then see if we can find someone who wants to take a look at it, or we can share some thoughts, or be prepared to talk about it in earnest next meeting as well.
Sounds good. I will do that.
All right. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to read the next section. So the board will be entering into executive session per MGL Chapter 38, Section 21, and not returning to open session to discuss potential property acquisition. Exemption 6, as the chair has determined that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the town's position. It's at 8:27 p.m. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Excellent. Thank you both. All in favor? Al?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Ellen?
Aye.
And Doug is aye. All right. Now I'm just going to stop the recording.